It's Monday on Jasiri, and as Nigeria wakes up to a new week, we're here to bring clarity, context, and the conversations that truly set the tone. We're just 18 days away from Christmas and 25 days to the new year. Okay, better. And you can feel that familiar shift in the air. The rush to wrap things up, the quiet reflection on how far we've come, the anticipation of what the next chapter might hold, and of course, the extra traffic on Lagos roads. But we leave that. This time of year has its own pulse. For some, it's excitement. For others, it's exhaustion. And for many, it's a gentle reminder to pause and take stock. So this morning, we're easing into the week with intention, grounding ourselves in the stories that matter and the voices that deserve to be heard. Thank you for starting your Monday and your journey into the final stretch of the year with us here on Jasiri.
Well, just as Tolu said, we're here for conversations that matter and for reflection on how far we've come. And our first conversation fits right into that. Now, today, we're spotlighting one of Nigeria's most consistent voices in civic engagement and citizen empowerment. Now, for 15 years, Enough is Enough Nigeria, better known as EiE, has been at the forefront of driving accountability, strengthening democratic participation, and reminding Nigerians of the power they hold when they speak with one voice. Now, from its beginnings as a citizens' movement frustrated by governance failures, EiE has grown into a national force, organizing, educating, and mobilizing people across demographics and across the country. 15 years later, its work has shaped conversations, influenced reforms, and inspired a new generation of advocates. Now, this morning, we're looking back at those 15 years of impact, the lessons learned, and the journey ahead. Joining us is the Executive Director of EiE Nigeria, Opeyemi Adamolekun. Good morning.
Welcome
Thank you for
back to
joining.
Yeah, she's feeling like, okay, 15 years, really?
It's not easy.
It just passes. All right. Before we celebrate the successes, it's important to understand the origin story. Very important. EiE began as a response to a national movement, one that exposed gaps in leadership and citizens' awareness. So let's start at the very beginning. How a small group of concerned citizens built a movement that has lasted 15 years. Before EiE came into existence, what were the early signs or frustrations that convinced you and the others with you that Nigeria needed a citizens' movement like this?
Well, it started with, this is, let me take us back to January 2010. So thank you, ladies. Thanks for having me.
Oh, okay.
Take us back to January 2010. Dua was missing.
In action.
The whole president was missing. So it was either dead or alive. People weren't sure. And what was happening at the time was that he was ill. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, brain dead. But his wife and a few others around him were trying to pretend that he was still functional. So they would take documents in and somebody else would sign, forging his signature. I think it was Dora Akinyuli that was making noise as a minister at the time that this doesn't make any sense. So Save Nigeria Group under Pastor Tunde Bakare were planning a protest in January, and Chude Judonwa and Adebola had tried to get involved, and I guess they wanted to get involved in the planning because they were like, well, young people need to engage, and they were more like, yeah, come, but we are planning, you can join us, was the vibe that they got. Then in February, Future Awards that was run by the Future Project, owned by Red Media, again Chude and Adebola, had their 5th awards ceremony. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was keynote. And she held up data and just basically said, because of the number of young Nigerians, they have the power to shift anything they want in Nigeria. Fast forward 2 weeks, Chude wrote an email to about 10, 15 people, and that was titled, Where is the Outrage? And his point was simply that you can't have the likes of a Wole Soyinka, Femi Falana, Tunde Bakare, who by then Save Nigeria had done their protest. So you can't have those guys who have less time in Nigeria protesting, but those of us, quote unquote, who are younger, were not doing anything. There was a lot of chatter on Facebook, obviously, Twitter, BlackBerry Messenger, and that was basically it. So the email led to a meeting, and they started planning this protest. Adebola did the groundwork in Abuja, dropping letters and all of that. And Bisola Edu, a good friend of mine, invited me to the protest. So I was invited, JJ, to attend a protest in Abuja. And I thought it was fun. I was doing my youth service at the time. I had just finished business school. I moved back to Nigeria, doing youth service, and I thought, it's a good way to spend time. And that was my that's what got me involved.
I almost wanted to say your villain origin story. Yeah. I was not the villain that came out, it was the hero.
Truly the origin story. So we did that in March of 2010, in April, so National Assembly, in April to Governor Fashola here in Lagos. And a few weeks after, it was like, okay, we can't continue to protest every time we're upset. What do we do now?
Yeah.
Elections were 2011. And so the idea was that why don't we take all this energy and anger and turn it into young people participating in the 2011 general elections. We got some grant money. Office opened January 2011. The person we hired to manage the office quit in February. Elections were in April. Now, because I'd spent my youth service year more or less with movement, it was like, okay, I'll run it, I'll guide us through elections, and then after elections, we'll figure out what we're doing. Yeah.
And then guiding led to here we are now.
That was 14 years ago.
You know, so that started around, I think, was the doctrine of necessity. That was a large part of the Yaradua situation then, and then we moved forward. So we have a spark that is now lit that leads to the creation of EiE Nigeria and the formalization of that. So you mentioned some of the earliest voices behind the movement. In those early meetings, what was the vision that you had for EiE? Was it clear that it was going to be something that spanned so many years? Were you looking at just dealing with one issue? Was it meant to be an answer for a time, or was it meant to be something that had a life of its own, depending on how long you needed to push Nigerians to take up their own mantle?
Good question. For me, to be honest, I'm not quite sure. I think I was just busy. Let me put it that way. I can't speak for Judy and Adebola what they saw, but what I would say is that when the protests were organized, nobody had a plan for an organization. That one was very clear. It was just a protest to express anger. But what then became the organization was the fact that just expressing anger wasn't good enough. Then what do you do with that anger? And elections gave expression, gave voice. And after the elections, then we had, interestingly, a strategy session. It was with Fela Durotoye. And that was when, it was really literally after the elections, that we then started thinking, okay, then what?
Then what, yeah.
Elections have happened, young people have participated, we now have a president, what do we do now? And so the idea was building an organization that allowed citizens to amplify voice. So rather than just a small group of people in one place, if you had a national organization that could help amplify voice, we could do a lot more. And then the challenge of sort of what, it was meant to be a movement in a sense. So people were meant to be members and then join, but it quickly became a more formal organization in kind of navigating that process. So yeah, so I always say, we made it up as we went along.
Wow.
And survived.
And you're still surviving 15 years after. I know that money, funding, organization and credibility are usually, huge challenges that new civic movements face. So how did EiE survive those early obstacles when it comes to funding? And what other kinds of challenges, teething challenges that you went through in the very beginning?
I think one was sort of the leadership question. So I was there and kind of like, okay, am I staying, am I not staying? And I've always been very passionate about Nigeria. So for me, at some point, it was a platform to do something about it. But I also didn't really understand the civil society space very much. And neither did Adebola or Chude or any one of them, because they
especially not in the Nigerian context.
In the Nigerian context. And because also they were just citizens entrepreneurs who were upset about an issue, did something, and now we have this organization. So I think part of it was also, I would say, my fault in maybe not spending as much time to understand the space. A lot of funding for governance-related stuff comes up from abroad. So you write grant applications and people choose to give you money based on what it is that you say you want to do. But I've always maintained that because of the type of work that we do, foreign funding is not sustainable. And I remember the early years for those organizations that gave us money, we would have to write that their money was not involved in a protest. So they gave you money to organize a workshop, a town hall, a seminar, and then they see you on the news protesting. They need to disconnect from that, and it made sense because as a foreign body, they can't be seen to be
Funding,
destabilizing the
yes,
country.
or advocating for regime change and all that. Yeah.
Those kinds of words.
Yes.
Now they will say terrorism or whatever it is we'll use. So that was always a challenge. So for me, I think fundamentally I said, if the response needed was to mobilize people to the streets, I can't constantly be mindful of who my funder is and if I am able to do that or not. And also because it is Nigeria.
Yeah.
Nigerians must believe in what we're doing. The idea is to change. Like the person who's giving me money from Chicago or DC or London, they're living in Chicago, DC, and London. They don't live in Lagos or Abuja or Port Harcourt. So yes, they are doing a good thing, and it's necessary and it's good. But for sustainability, Nigerians must believe enough that we want a better Nigeria. And
To
not
fund it themselves.
not only talk about it, but also put money behind it.
And I think also, given how our government operates, it's also unsustainable because they're looking into your numbers. We'll talk about it. The kind of pushback you've gotten. The social media bill was intended for people like EiE, but we'll get into that conversation. Dashan.
Now, speaking of build, now EiE brought together young professionals, creatives, tech voices, and activists, right? How did you build such a diverse coalition in the early days? Was there a moment in those days, when you felt the movement might not survive? What pulled it through?
And it's very interesting. It's one of the things I've reflected on as we thought about 15 years. A lot of people tend to think organized civil society is the body that puts a lot of these, mobilizes people to the streets or whatever. But if you go back to concerned professionals in 1993, they had just annulled the Abiola elections. Atedo Peterside, who was then MD of a bank, wrote an article for The Guardian, just basically saying that this is not working. And he was then able to pull in his colleagues. So you had Aswe Ighodalo, who was a lawyer. You had Konya Ajayi, who was also a lawyer. You had Antiobi Ezekosili. And a lot of them as professionals, that's why it was called concerned patutomi. That's why it was called concerned professionals. Then became an organization that organized protests, did advertorials, supported those who were challenging, anyway, military rule. Now, they did not become a formal organization, and then everybody went back to their businesses, so to speak. But for me, it was a reminder that it wasn't an organization. Now, fast forward to EiE. Chudi and Adebola, same thing. Future Project, Red Media, and that was where they knew a lot of the pop culture influencers because their platforms, Future Project, worked with them in terms of getting young people engaged, photography, this, entertainment. They would do awards, invite them. So it was from those relationships that all of those guys ended up coming to the protest. So Omotola was at the protest in Abuja. Omaomi was at the created a whole new song. I need to find that clip. Creating a song on the spot in front of the National Assembly. If Tubaba's manager was there, Charlie Boy. So it was the influence that Chudi and Adebola had that brought them in, and then carried that along for a while. But because it was also not my space, I struggled. It wasn't as easy for me to maintain those relationships. There were some that were easier, either because maybe we had a natural affinity and got along. But because they weren't people I dealt with day to day, like Adebola and Chude did, some of those didn't transition as well as others. So for example, Banky and I still have a relationship till today. Timmy and I still have a relationship till today. Tubaba, under his Tubaba Foundation, did a non-violent election campaign. So we then got to work together on that as well. So that's what kind of shaped that. Now if you forward, so you've done concerned professionals, done enough is enough. If you fast forward to NSA, same thing, just citizens. None of that were organizations coming together as well. Okay.
Let's take a quick time out because we can look at the early days, but we also have to look at the impact over 15 years and also what's next. This is Jasiri. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Now that we've explored how EiE began, let's move into the heart of its 15-year journey. Let's take a look at major milestones and the impact EiE has made, from campaigns that shifted national conversations to the everyday work of empowering citizens. We'll also reflect on the lessons learned along the way, what 15 years of advocacy in this space in Nigeria has taught EiE about government, about citizens, and about sustaining momentum in a country like ours. Opeyemi Adamolekun, the Executive Director of Enough is Enough Nigeria, is with us. Okay, I mean, just before I spoke about the social media bill, and interesting enough, sort of like the pushback you've often received from governments, and I think I've worked with you guys almost since 2012. I sent her a video of myself and Gbenga Shesan and Emeka from one of my very first stations, and I just thought back that I've been actually working with you guys for a long time. We also did Office of the Citizen on radio as well.
2011 elections.
Yeah, 20 Revoda.
Yeah.
Yes, and we also did Office of the Citizen on radio, and we're also bringing that to News Central as well. So look out for that in the coming weeks. But I want to ask about the campaigns or initiatives that you consider defining moments for the organization. I remember when we were doing it on radio, it was even just to get the National Assembly to do automated voting and to put on an intercom system. And you're just wondering to yourself, why are we having to fight people in power for the basics that would help to hold them accountable? So what are the national campaigns? What are the defining moments of the organization for you? And what is the pushback that you really have seen has come the way of your organization and many others?
I think pushback, and the pushback that I actually like, is the fact that, so for example, when PDP was in government, we were tagged opposition. So we were assumed to be APC. And then when APC came in and we started criticizing, then we were, under Buhari, we were tagged PDP. Now I think they tend to say we're obedient. Like leading into the 2023 elections, we became obedient, is the criticism. And for me, it's a wonderful sign that it just means that we're holding government accountable. And if your base reaction is to say that means we are in an opposition, then it means we're doing our work. That's one. Number two, I think also to your point about social media bill, is that because we leverage social media a lot.
So much.
Social media was free. I mean, it was free. It's still free, even though the monetization of it now makes it, and the deliberate manipulation of the algorithm now makes it a completely different beast. But at that time, it was free and it was basic. You followed the people you wanted to follow, you engaged the conversations you wanted to engage, and you could actually have a learning conversation on Twitter, for example.
Don't try that now.
Our biases are deep.
Don't try it
now. The way the algorithm works, it allows you to just be
it magnifies,
it magnifies opposition and allows you to be in an echo chamber of also, at the same time, allows you to be in an echo chamber sometimes of those who support you.
I think
so
like
therefore, if someone strays on your timeline that doesn't align, there's full-on fight. So it's quite challenging. But it was a space that was, and it was also the very beginning days of government officials getting on social media. And so for us, it was really good to see that interaction, as in one of the early examples, I forget what minister it was, came on Twitter and said something. And the immediate response was, that's a lie. Now, it was hard for them because they're not used to feedback.
They're not.
Because it's TV. Like, no matter what I say now, nobody watching.
I'm not going to hear nothing.
Same for radio, unless it's a call-in program. For social media, your response is immediate and it is swift. And also at that time, Twitter was, I don't know how many characters. So you didn't have time for the flowery language of Your Excellency, dear sir.
Honorable.
Ain't nobody got time for that. You just went straight to what you wanted to say.
They were like, these children, these unruly, untrained, very, very rude children of anger.
Children about Jonathan. I call us children of anger. So shaping that space as well, making social media a place for engagement. And you see it now. Like there are tons of content creators now creating any and every type of content. But the challenge with the way the space is how do you choosing credible people to follow? At that time as well, there were not that many of us. So you knew, and I say that with pride in the work that we did, you knew credible voices. So if you wanted to hear the facts and analysis that made sense, you would follow handles like Enough is Enough. I think we still probably do. I think maybe one or two of our peers in the space are now on par with the social media footprint. For a long time, EiE, bar none, like by a mile, had the largest social media footprint of any organization doing governance in Nigeria, of any. Other pushback was during NSAS, our accounts were frozen, or even during end bad governance, our accounts were frozen. And again, we were not an organizing body. We were just amplifying what citizens were doing across the country.
Yeah, supporting them.
And supporting, certainly. In any which way we could, on radio, full-page adverts, any way we could. But what I always say is the fact that we're critical of government and we hold government accountable doesn't mean we don't work with people in government who actually want to get work done. Omobala Johnson was Nigeria's first Minister of Communications Technology.
Yes.
She set up a committee to design Nigeria's broadband map, plan and policy. I was on that committee. She was a Minister of the Federal Republic. She served under Jonathan. But it's not a CV marker for me. It was work. It was work for Nigeria. We did it and we kept it moving. So, yeah.
All right, now you've spoken a bit about, how you've been able to organize, in Abuja, in Lagos, and then working with some people in government who want the work done. So what has the organization learned about mobilizing citizens in a country as complex as Nigeria? What surprised you the most about, government, about citizens, or even about the advocacy space in Nigeria?
Because it feels like the Nigerians you're fighting for are fighting you for fighting for them.
Fighting for them.
You can't win.
Well, we will win. We will win. I think the fundamental thing that took me a while to get to. So I grew up on a university campus. My parents were academics. And for me, things made sense. There was a certain way life was run, and I lived in Nigeria. And then I always say I grew up in Ife. Ife has two things, the university and the Oni's Palace. Those are the only things we have, really. So it wasn't that I grew up in a Lagos or an Ibadan and that level of exposure. But there was just something about Ife at the time we lived there that made us believe we could do anything and could be anywhere. So if you grow up feeling you can do anything and you live in a small village, then that was my view of Nigeria. And because I came from that view, I arrived into governance work or civil society work, believing that there was a certain demographic of people who wanted life to make sense. They wanted to go to schools that made sense, go to hospitals that made sense, be comfortable in a sense, and they wasn't asking for too much. And that's how I came into it. And so as enough is enough journey progressed, I was just like, why is this thing so hard? Like, we want water, we want light, we want a road.
Very simple.
I don't understand.
It's difficult.
What is the problem here?
You have the ability to make it happen.
So
You
why
have the
not?
money. What is the
What is the
issue?
issue? And that's why we're paying you to have a job. I don't get it. But I finally realized, and I think it's this now conversation we talk about vested interests, that there is a certain level of Nigeria's dysfunction that people benefit from. And so there's no incentive to make it work. That's number one. And that's maybe on the leadership side. And on the citizenship side, on the citizen side, there's nothing in our structure or curriculum, I would say, as Nigeria, that teaches you that you have power, that teaches you that you have voice.
And that those people are accountable to you.
And so that they basically work for, it's called public servant.
Yes.
You are a servant to the
Up
public.
to the president is a public servant.
Exactly. So that notion wasn't common, wasn't basic knowledge that I thought it was. And so for a lot of Nigerians, the fact that we're in a democracy is just the fact that we have elections. And that's all. That we go to vote every 4 years. So because it took me a while, and I take that personally, to understand that fully, it reflected in EiE's work as well. And so over, I think it was probably 5 years, not 5 years ago, we're 15 now, so 10 years ago, is when we then began the notion of the Office of the Citizen. Now understanding that we actually needed to get citizens to understand that they have power and have voice. And that just takes time. And that's the work that needs to be done.
I liked where you terminated that, because I know at the heart of the work that EiE does is getting people, encouraging Nigerians to stand up for their rights and fight for their country, which is quite challenging in recent times, I must say, because many Nigerians already feel discouraged. They feel disconnected, about the governance generally. And you can see that playing out in every sphere of work. Every sphere that you find Nigerians, you can literally feel that apathy. So what do you think is at the root of it? Is it just the fact that our leadership is just not cutting it? Or the lack of understanding? Or I like this word that I know it, but it comes out larger in these days in my mind. This word, impunity.
Since Shetta said the word last week.
I know the word, but it just
it sits on it.
Weight of impunity, because here in this side of the world, people get away with anything.
With murder.
Even with the craziest of things that you can see evidence wrong, and yet they will still tell you that this background is pink. Even though it has some it's telling me that this background is red.
Okay, red is a better concept.
Yeah.
Or black, in fact.
And it's glaring. But that's why this is the country I first heard that, snake swallowed.
Monkeys swallow.
These are things, and these are not something that they say behind closed doors in the joke. Maybe
They will put microphones in front of them and share this foolishness.
Yeah, takes it in as well.
Yes, and I'm wondering that, are we reading
And the
Animal
rats.
Farm? Are we
The
reading,
rats.
Yeah, are we reading Animal Farm again? Because this is quite confusing. So where is the root of this? Because I want to believe he has multiple roots.
And let me ask you, do you think it's gotten worse? 15 years of doing this advocacy, has it gotten worse? Are Nigerians more apathetic, more disconnected, more, at this point, what can we do?
It's interesting. I struggle with that. Because in some vein, I mean, earlier I was talking about people now, a lot of people are creating content and talking about governance and making fun, making jest. I think the apathy is apathy, I would say, in action, not apathy in interest. So a lot more people are interested in governance, and they can laugh about it. We have a whole show doing skits.
Yeah, I like this one that does this governor.
Where's the edits?
Where's the edit? Oh God, I find it very interesting.
Amunike or something.
Amunike. Thank you.
So you have that. So we can, and there are enough characters, from rats to snake to Wike and his antics to whoever is sleeping in the National Assembly. So then there's enough content that people can make fun of and make jest of. But that's where it stops.
That's where it stops.
So, and that's, for me, that's where the challenge is. So at least, which is a good thing, because at least there's an awareness enough to know that you should not be sleeping in the National Assembly.
Yeah.
There's awareness enough to know that you don't need, I think someone did, Minister of State for Defense, Matawale, when he went to Zamfara, he had like a 30-car convoy. And someone, I don't know who got, and you sometimes wonder, they themselves, they will put the video on social media themselves. Someone had the video and ran a commentary, and it was just, it said, I don't understand this people. 30-car convoy. That's why I did a whole commentary about it. So, yes and no, that would be my answer. And it's in the getting to the action that we are missing in the action. And when you ask what's the root cause, I would say part of it is, and my organization, EiE, we've been talking about this quite a bit, is that we've also not done a very good job of storytelling.
Everyone or just you?
Generally.
Okay.
So for us, it's also kind of putting ourselves on the spot to do better.
Yeah.
But I think generally, both civil society players and the media really, because in a sense, it's almost as if good news of a certain type makes the news. But the good news that just shows citizens who got together, went to the local government chairman's office and got something shifted, got something done, got a problem solved, is nice news, but might not necessarily make front page news.
Main news.
But the local government chairman that had a snake swallow money will make, in the ridiculousness of it, will make front page news. So citizens are more affirmed about impunity, not affirmed, are more aware. It's more reinforced. That's the English word. Things like impunity, bad governance, nonsense behavior, anyhowness, all the English that we use, is more reinforced because that's what they hear over and over and over. But the citizen who got the local government chairman to dig a borehole, who got their senator to account for money that was meant in the budget for Kekena Pep, got him to deliver it, got your governor to fix a road because you petitioned or you danced. There's a group of kids that danced a while ago on a bad road, and then the road got action. Stories like that, we don't tell enough. And so because we don't, there's always a sense of nothing will happen.
Or that nothing is improving.
And nothing would, not even just nothing is improving, that my actions won't do anything. So why bother? But if I'm seeing, which is why I'm excited about the show that you referenced, if I'm seeing more often stories of just citizens, not because you knew anyone, not because your enough is enough, not because you're an organization, but citizens in a community who decided, you know what, we have had enough and we want to do something. And they did it and they got results. If you hear that over and over,
it encourages others to challenge.
Okay, maybe, let me try and see what I can do.
All right, so we're running out of time and we have two more questions. But one big question I have is, we can see that Nigeria is changing. And maybe not for the better, maybe for the better, depends on who you ask. But it's changing rapidly, politically, socially, digitally as well. How do you see citizen activism itself also evolving?
I think we need to think deeper about how to leverage technology. Because not only do we need to engage an audience that is English literate, we need to figure out a way to translate content to Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, Tiv, whatever language it is, So it's easier for people to hear things in ways that make sense to them. And then also meet them where they are. People are not on Twitter. Not everybody's on Facebook. Yes, TikTok seems to have mixed multitude. Hallelujah. But finding what, if it's radio that, we were on radio for a while. Nigeria, I think that might change. It would be nice if a poll is done now. But for the longest time, most Nigerians got their news from radio.
Yes.
And that's why at a point in time, EiE had radio programs in 33 states.
But I studied it in Lagos. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was Tosin Bucknell that started, but her show was called No Wahala Monday. But Office of the Citizen started
became,
with
yeah.
the name Office of started with you. So that's what I think, leveraging technology to translate content faster.
And meet people where they are.
And I think that would, and then amplify success stories. So that the loop of there's a problem, somebody did something, they got a result, you hear it back quickly. So you're not like, if you're aware of a problem, it's not that you never know if the problem was solved. That you get feedback that the problem was solved.
And that brings us to citizens journalism, and I think that's a call to action that we, as media, must take into account.
Hello, Opeyemi, it has been such an interesting conversation, but while we wrap up, 15 years is quite a long time, quite a milestone. How do you plan on celebrating it?
Very quickly.
On Wednesday.
I didn't see her at the party, so she don't.
But was she obeying?
No, she was not.
No, she's quickly telling you no.
Not really. But we're celebrating on Wednesday. The theme is called Footprints and Front Lines. A few years ago, we launched a book called Footprints, Past, Present, and Future. And then, so Footprints is the work that we've done and the footprints that we've left behind. And Front Lines is the fact that we're still here on the front lines. And not just us, everybody on this Nigeria project. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who gave that keynote, is keynoting again this year. And we have 7 people that represent what we call our stakeholders. So Fola Adeola, private sector, the Emir of Kano, traditional institutions, Bishop Kuka, religious institutions, Antiobi Ezekwesili, civil society, MI, pop culture, Frankai Gogun, the media, and I think Omobola Johnson that I referenced as well, government. So yeah, we'll be celebrating at Muson. Unfortunately, registration is now closed, but we will likely stream. So check EiE's YouTube page on Wednesday at 6. And we're looking forward to a fantastic time. And even our host, Ebuka, hosted the first debate we had in 2011. He's coming back to host. And then Ayo, Myro Essay, picked up from Tolu and also had an Office of the Citizen program where she was also on radio. And she's also back to host as well. So yeah.
So one thing I'll say is that you guys know how to keep community. Keep community. Opeyemi, thank you so much, and congratulations on 15 years of EiE, of impact, of citizen activism, and of encouraging Nigerians to know their rights and to take the Office of the Citizen mantle upon themselves. We'll take a quick time out. There's more after this.